Good morning, everyone. Is it okay? Yeah. Right. Do we have any managers here today who wants to make real difference in their work? Good. Good, good. Do we have any QA engineers or QA analysts who wants to become managers, leads and managers? Right, you're in the right place. So let me ask you a question. What do you think the best or one quality which a test manager or a quality manager requires to become a successful quality manager? Anyone? Sorry?
Soft skills.
Yeah. And any other? Yeah? Yep. I think that's a good view. So what I think as a quality engineering manager is one quality which I'm not really good at sometimes is knowing when to say no, right? So that's my view on what is the best quality of a quality engineering manager to become successful, right? So my name is Umakanth Ravirala. I'm a quality engineering manager at Elsevier. I work in Oxford, a very beautiful city and historical city. So what do we do at Elsevier? We are information and analytics company. We are the major providers of healthcare, technological and scientific research information. So we started 2 centuries ago as a publishing company, but we moved more towards digital. We don't call ourselves publishing company anymore. We call ourselves information and analytics company. So we are part of a bigger group, RELX group. We have read exhibitions in educational institutions, LexisNexis Risk, and so on. So we make about 10 billion every year revenue, and we have customers in 180 countries, and we have offices in 40 countries, and 30,000 plus employees working for us globally. Right. So today, I would like to discuss what we have done differently in improving our quality. This is not referring to any articles, not any references. It's purely what we have done to improve our quality. So that is our focus for today. I'd like to highlight some of the myths, what people generally think about Agile when it comes to test management, and what was our vision, how we improved on the end-to-end integration testing at enterprise level, right? And some of the automation and metrics. So let's go into the detail. So, all right, test management in Agile. This is an ideal place where everyone wanted to be a long time ago. So you had a structured approach to every stage of software development lifecycle. You had an entry, exit criteria, quality checks, gateways, an approval meeting at the end of every phase, and so on. So you're planning very structurally with all the dependencies identified. You had a dedicated QA team who are focused on testing and reporting, executing test cases, writing test plans, test cases, blah, 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 all of those things. And you had certain timelines for executing and reporting your testing. And you know this one very well. If you worked in test manager in the previous world, you get all the blame if something goes wrong as a test manager, right? So what has changed over last, I would say, 10 years? This was previous. We love to be there because you have a very clearly defined approaches for every stage of software development, let's say. But what happened is this one. I'm not sure if anyone has seen this. Did you notice that? You're changing a wheel on a running car. So that is what we are doing. We want to deliver our software as we run our systems. That is Agile and simple picture to me. You cannot say, oh, I need to stop and check my air pressure, check my nuts, bolts, everything. You need to change your wheel while you're running. That is what we are in the world now. So how it impacts as a quality engineering or a quality manager? Let's go into the details. So to me, quality assurance, where a quality team was testing, identifying defects, reporting defects, working on defects, retesting defects, and all of those things changed into quality engineering. What exactly quality engineering is, we'll see in later slides. Right, when any organization looking for agile transformation, the first thing they do is look at a methodology from the market. Shall I go with a Scrum or Kanban, DSDM if anyone knows that, or SAFe, or mix of these Scrum Ban, whatever. So, and they look at the next step they look at is what roles we have, right? We are agile, great. We don't have any test manager defined in agile guidelines anywhere. So it's true for a small team if you're working on a small product, but imagine you're working on a very complex enterprise level environment. There is no control of what's going on in the quality. Imagine a situation where you don't have a test manager in your enterprise level and you're running end-to-end tests where everyone says, I've done my part, I've done my part, I've done my part, but the end-to-end business process breaks when you put it into production. That is the first myth. So luckily, my boss, who is a senior director of technology, recognized this problem and he hired me when they were doing agile transformation. The next one is, when we're looking at agile transformation, a lot of teams or managers look at, yay, we are agile. We are a cross-functional team. Testing can be done by anyone in the team. That's really great. We want our teams to be there where everyone can pick up a piece of work from the backlog and deliver a quality software. However, a quality engineer or a quality analyst in the team is not just testing. We have to remember QA is, or quality engineering is not just testing. Testing is part of quality engineering, right? So we have to recognize when we are going towards agile, the importance of quality engineers in the team. And the next one, a lot of teams talk about agile. We are agile. And the first thing comes to their mind is documentation is not necessary. Right. So agile guidelines say enough documentation is required. But people take it as, oh, we don't need, we can go without documentation and just do as we go. This is a biggest mistake people do when they go into agile transformation. Make sure you have a clearly defined artifacts. At the same time, maintain the balance. Don't put too much of administration, documentation, and so on. But see what is bare minimum. Do not ignore documentation. And the next one is automation. So there are different views on automation across industry. I worked in a very complex financial integration where one of the biggest banking migrations in UK, Lloyds and Halifax Bank merged together to become a great entity. So, and I worked in Transport for London where we do a lot of 4 million to 7 million transactions a day on the journeys, right? So at that complex environment, automation, people think, there are two views on automation. I do not, sorry. All right. So the two views are, few people say, yeah, we can automate absolutely everything. And few people argue, no, we cannot automate everything. So how do you maintain that balance and use automation for the best cause? Do not use automation for the sake of doing automation and reporting to your manager or your department or your head of technology or CTO if you're working with them. Right, I really like this one. Automation, right? Don't end up in that situation. Next one, when people talk about Agile, they look metrics. First thing is, few people say, what are they? We are agile. We just look at our retrospective and we work, right? And few people measure things like number of lines of code we have written, how many bills passed, failed, how many test cases I've written, how many executed, how many passed. There are various views on these metrics. Really, do I need to measure all of them? What is the main objective of having metrics is to have some improvement. So if you're measuring lines of code passed in the first time, second time, I don't give a damn. What I want is a quality software at the end of the day. You write 10 lines of code or 100 lines of code. I want a good working software. So how do we make sure that is, so measure what is really necessary. Don't measure metrics just for the sake of measuring and impose into your teams to measure unnecessary things, right? So when we were doing Agile transformation, we looked at how we want to do this quality in our teams, right? So we put a vision. Our vision was very simple and easily anyone can understand what we are trying to do. Because if I write 100-page document, nobody's going to read anything. So our vision was just one pager, right? This is our vision. We said we want to shift all the quality towards left and we want to fail fast. Right. How do we do it? By conducting tests as early as possible, right? Fail tests early in the life cycle, and the first thing is test most likely problem areas because you know where you think the problems are and test those scenarios as the first thing. Here, there are cosmetic things you can test, but what is that bare minimum? Fail fast. And then fail often, which is, again, test frequently with different conditions. That is what we are saying. Test as many times as possible. And faster automation is one thing which we can use. And relevance. This is what I always argue with a lot of people. Do you really want to test everything in your build? Or what is that relevance testing? So if there's a small code change, we do the risk analysis, right? So test what is really necessary. And I'm not saying don't test, don't have a good regression pack, but that is the bare minimum. And then we looked at collaborative teams. How do we make our teams work together? So collaborative teams is not just testing team, not just quality team. It's the complete agile squad, right? When I say complete, you talk about product owner or business analyst, depending on your organization structure. Make everyone work together and make your quality engineers as part of that team. So don't have a separate quality engineering team testing at later stages. Make them as part of the life cycle. And your business should be traveling with your journey. It's not business approving at the end. My view is business should travel with you in the software SDLC cycle. And right, cost-effective and optimized tool set. We'll talk more in detail about this tool set later, but at enterprise level, there is a possibility that every team is using different tools and different approaches. How do you maintain that integrity, right? One team is, we'll go into the details. And the next one is, how do you improve your process? So it's the same cycle what Carolina talked about this morning. You plan, do, act, and improve. So it's basically you repeat that process. So my vision was very simple. I didn't want to have 100-page document, one pager anyone can understand, right? Make it as simple as possible. So you all know about integration testing, right? Integration testing, everyone, we define testing modules together and so on and so on and so on. But imagine you're working in an environment like this. It is the most possible simplification of work environment where we work. So you have multiple teams running businesses, and you have a lot of ETL process pulling the data, and you have a very big machine churning the data and making more sensible data, and you have consumers. And if you look at the technologies, plenty of technologies in this. So if you look at the teams, there are 7 or 8 Scrum teams or Agile teams working in that left side. And these are 2 teams working on the integration area, bringing the data from systems and managing the data. And you have 6 or 7 Scrum teams working on different business purposes. So imagine the complexity, right? 6 or 7, 3. So 15 to 20 teams working for a business. What happens? You're building very complex business integration. So how do you work as a QA, quality engineering manager, if you want to test one business process, which requires, for example, you make an order on Elsevier.com as a organization, you can go and make, say, £1 million worth of products you buy. That goes all the way into your billing, shipping, all of those processes. So you work with the CRM team on the customer details, you work with the Salesforce on the agreements, you work with the finance team on the collections, you work with the fulfillment team on the shipping your products, and so on. So how do you make sure this business process is working exactly as it's supposed to work? So some of the things what we have done is to modularize. So you break down your functionality and you test in bits and pieces. However, make sure your end-to-end functionality is not broken. So we'll go into that details how we have done that. Test automation. So this is one of the things which I really like working at Elsevier. Generally, quality managers or quality engineering managers go to market and see what tool is best for my application or what tool is best for my system or business process to test automation. We went in a different approach. We looked at what is it we want to test first. And then we built our custom-built frameworks with everything open source. So we didn't want to go with the commercial tools for costing a fortune. We need licenses, agreements, maintenance, patches, all of those things. So we went with the community softwares which are available in the market, and we built different levels of automation framework. So if you look at what we have done for database, everything we have done in BDD because that's where we build the gaps between business and the technology. And then we built underlying using Java, Python, whatever programming language is suitable for that particular application. So database, API, and UI. So UI is just 10% of our testing, I would say. Majority of the testing what we do is on the database and API level. So ETL process, so much of data. We deal with millions of transactions every day and so on. So this really helped us to disintegrate that big system what we've looked at, and we can test those silos as part of the development lifecycle. Right. The next one we talked about is metrics. So when Agile teams are looking, the general things they measure is sprint bound down and your code lines and so on. So we took a step back and we looked at what is that we really want to use metrics to improve. So one thing that came up was how do we maintain consistency across our Agile teams, right? When I say consistency, the purpose of this metrics is not to compare two teams how they are doing. It's more of helping the team to maintain consistency. So if I'm delivering a 50 story points worth of stories in every sprint, how do we keep that 50 story points as we go? And that measure will give us predictability. So if you have 1,000 story points worth of backlog, you can predict that in next 20 sprints, we will complete our complete backlog. So that is when we can engage the business, and business exactly knows when they're going to get their features out. So we have transparency involved. So the purpose of metrics is to build something really useful. The purpose of metrics is to make some difference. So that is the objective. And the next one we looked at is defects. Everyone is measuring defects, how many defects we reported, how many defects fixed, closed, and so on. But we looked at a step more. We said, what is the different stages we are getting these defects reported? So if I see a lot of defects reported in UAT or business area, how do I move that towards left, right? The main purpose of integration testing is to reduce UAT defects or business defects. So UAT to me is just a tick in the box. Yeah, it's working, it's working. If I find a severity 1 in UAT, it's kind of something terribly wrong, we need to work on it. So that focused improvement we achieved with measuring the right information. And we also measured what type of defects we are getting, right? So when we have a defect reported, tester or business user will not know what type of defect is. The only thing they know is, yeah, it should work like this, but it's not working. This is actual result, this is expected result. So we do analysis, and we add a tag. What type of defect is it? Is it a code-related issue? Is it an environment or data? And so on. So with that way, we can, again, have a focused improvement. So if I find more code defects, there is something wrong in the development practices. How can we write a better code right from the beginning? If we are finding a lot of environmental defects, how can we improve our mocks, stubs, or real environments, what we are using for integration testing? If we are finding, say, requirements issue, requirements are not clear, user stories are not clear, then we are going against our definition of ready. The user story acceptance criteria is not good. This is what we expected. This is what working. Guys, sort it out. Business, how can we improve this? That is the real focus, real benefit. So we also pulled out information from production incidents, right? How many things that are being reported in production on a day-to-day basis? So if I'm seeing, so if there is a peak, we have seen here, right? There's a peak or a spike here in the graph. It means something went last night which really broke production environment, and we see a lot of incidents. So that is really a good measure to see where we are hitting these spikes and take necessary actions to improve that. So if you look at this one, you might be wondering, what is this one? It is Tableau, if anyone using Tableau. We pulled our Jira information. Production, we use Fresh Service or Tech Desk. It's one tool in the market. And we also pulled our CI builds, right? Everything is automated. We do not want another tester sitting and generating these reports every day. So we used Jira APIs to pull the data from Jira into a database. We used Fresh Service APIs. We used Jenkins APIs, pulled everything into a database, and then we put a dashboard. Everything is refreshed overnight. We can see that. So that is what we wanted to have. We wanted to have an automated way where we can see our report in the morning every day and take necessary actions, what went wrong. This is really good. However, it is a reactive way, right? You're only reacting after something happened. So how do we use a proactive way? That is where we use this metrics in last 2 months, and how can we improve that? So if your consistency, for example, there, we had very little amount of work done. Why? Is the team not good? Is somebody off sick? Did they not plan well or something? What happened? So it's Christmas time, everyone was off, and hence there's only little work done. And we also see what is the business requirements that are coming up. So we want to see the backlog going down, but we are having a linear increase in the backlog every day. So take necessary action to reduce it. If you look at there, it's going down again. So that is what we want to use metrics for in a proactive way. So some of the key points, you identify metrics what are really necessary for you, which will drive real improvements. Don't measure metrics for the sake of measuring. I would really say these are dangerous sometimes if you measure metrics just for the sake of measuring metrics. You have to be very careful what you're measuring. An automated way, don't spend so much of time in pulling these reports. Use this as an improvement rather than don't allocate 10 hours every sprint to generate reports. It's useless. Right? And the other thing which Michael in yesterday's presentation talked about, testers having access to code. right? I really like that. These metrics are visible to everyone in the organization. So we project this on a big screen every day. Make these metrics accessible to everyone so that relevant people can ask relevant questions, right questions to improve your process, your delivery. And say you analyze these metrics for 2 months, a month, and you have 10 improvements identified. Right, again, that is a big backlog of improvements. How do you handle that, right? If you have more than 2 items in the priority, to me, you don't have any priorities. So you should have always one priority. Pick what is the top one and work on it. And work against timelines, right? If you have an open-ended, you will never achieve anything. So first thing is identify your priority. Your priority should be, what is best for you? Is consistency or is reducing production incidents, depending on whatever you feel is the right one. But if you have more than 2 in your priority list, you don't have any priorities. That's my take on priorities. Right. So as part of this transformation, right, everything is looking so good. We had a vision, we had principles, guidelines we wanted to achieve. But yeah, it's an enterprise environment. You had diverse people, right, working in different teams. As we looked, about 20 agile teams working together for one department. And it's always difficult to have that one line or everybody in the same agreement. How do you make sure you handle that situation, right? I think somebody talked about how do you propose a new proposal to a group of 24? So a speaker yesterday talked about if you convince the first 6 people, they will automatically show the benefit to other 6 people and so on, so on. So pick your key stakeholders first and then work with them, right? And then make your teams work together. That is really, it's not as simple as we see in one statement, work together. You have people working in the organization for 20 years, 30 years, and people who join out of uni. So bringing all of those diverse people together is really challenging as a quality engineering manager. And you have to work with these people in order to deliver quality. So that's a tricky part. Sometimes you have to be a bit strong. That's the point I mentioned. You should know when to say no, right? You cannot accept everything. Sometimes you have to be very strong. At the same time, reasonable. Not just say, oh, I don't want to do it, but why you don't want to do it? What are the implications? So if you have that constructive feedback, I'm sure anybody can agree. Next one. So it's a very complex enterprise environment where you have legacy systems written 20 years, 30 years ago, and nobody knows what code inside. If you want to make some change, the person who wrote the code is not in the company, he's retired and spending time in an island somewhere, right? You don't have access to the knowledge. So how do you build this end-to-end business process in order to test a quality product, in order to make a quality product? Goes back to what we discussed about documentation. When you're improving something new, document it so that people have access to information. When you don't know, when you're working on a new procedure, document it so that people have access to what you're doing. And also work with your business stakeholders to understand what is actually expected. Right. This is another challenging part in end-to-end integration or enterprise environment. Every team, we looked at about 15 teams working. Everyone has their own priorities, everyone has their own timelines, business expectations, revenue restrictions, and so on and so forth. How do you make them work together? Again, collaboration is important, right? How did we handle this in our situation? So when I started 3 years ago at this place, the first thing I did was I identified key stakeholders from each team, each business unit, and then put a regular meeting with them. Make sure what is that they're expecting in the next 2 weeks' time. I don't want to plan 6 months, 1 year roadmap. What is it you're doing in the next 2 weeks that might impact other teams? Or what is it you're doing next 2 weeks that you might need support from other team? So a small increments, right? Now, we started with 1 week and then with 2 weeks. Now we are looking at quarterly roadmap. So it's kind of step-by-step improvement. It will not happen overnight. Trust me, it's really, really difficult to get these people together. I'm just reminded I've got 10 minutes left, so we'll rush through. And the next one is, in this large enterprise, you have a very complex test environments and right? So every system is different. Some of them are in cloud, some of them are in data still in the on-premise data servers and so on. How do you make sure you have a good working test environment? So it goes back to breaking down your testing, make use of automation, make use of builds, mocks, and stubs, and this data synthesis or synthetic transactions to test your data, and so on. Again, you cannot achieve this overnight. You need to work with architecture. You need to work with the designers to get that done. So I treat my test environments, end-to-end strategic test environments, as same as production environments. So then only you can have that right focus. Otherwise, they'll say it's just test environment, low priority, right? The next one is complex test data, right? So I'm sure you guys know about GDPR. A lot of companies, what they do is they use production data into test environments to have more real-time scenarios tested. However, we have built in this a very complex requirements. First is functionality. Second one is your compliance, your audit, and so on. How do you make sure you manage all of those aspects as a QA manager or QE manager, right? You basically break down your responsibilities, make sure your test team or agile team takes that ownership. You transition, right? We're talking about make everyone quality owner. So make sure your agile teams understand the importance of having good test data for end-to-end test coverage. Otherwise, there is no use of testing end-to-end. You always break your system in the production. Right, we briefly talked about this automation, right? There is no tool which will solve every problem. So you have to look at what is your custom frameworks, what is your most realistic approach on automating. Before we go there, so the tools we talked about, it's not about automation tools, it's also about your collaboration tools, it's also about your work management tools, right? So one thing which Carolina talked this morning about is Jira and Confluence. That's really good approach because both are well integrated. It's the same product. You can see what's happening in Confluence into Jira. So when I started here, work was managed in Jira. All the user stories, all the requirements written in Jira. And they had ALM, HP tool for test management, writing test cases there, defects, and so on. And they bought another tool to sync these two tools, right? That's interesting. I mean, Jira has got Zephyr. Why I need to use another test management tool? HP ALM is really great tool on its own, but am I using all of the functionalities of ALM? So I analyzed that. I said, let's migrate onto Zephyr. So any manual testing, what we do now is managed in Jira using Zephyr plugin. So I have visibility of requirement, test cases, defects. That's end-to-end traceability. Right? That is where you need to make conscious decision what is really important or good for your team, which will help the visibility, transparency, and accountability on your teams for quality. Right, and the other example is we had a lot of commercial tools for running performance testing. Right, they are pretty expensive and niche skill set. You needed to have one person who is dedicated to running performance testing across your department. And the performance testing was planned according to the availability of the resource or the tester. So that's strange to me. If I complete my sprint now, I want to do all my testing in that sprint. I don't want to leave anything in the next few sprints because there is a tester not available. So why don't we integrate this performance testing into your day-to-day life cycle? So we said, what is the best thing to do? Get rid of commercial tool, look at what is available in the market, and implement open source tools. So we use JMeter For example, for running a lot of API tests, which absolutely works well integrated into our build pipeline. So that's where we are. And right. So the people who are already test managers and the people who wanted to become test managers, what you can take away from this talk is, this is my experience. So if you're doing a agile transformation, first thing is recognize test management function is key for your organization success. Do not ignore test management because it's not defined in agile guidelines, right? So that's very important. And test management principles should really add value to your delivery cycle. Do not build processes that will jeopardize your delivery life cycle. So if you put a lot of checkpoints, a lot of documentation and so on, you are basically delaying your agile speed, which goes against what we have seen, right? Changing the tires on a moving car. So do not do that. And your quality engineering teams, or in fact, any engineers, empower them to implement tools that are really required for their work. Do not dictate tool selection. So if a team member or a developer or a tester comes up with an idea, ask them to do a POC and see how it can improve the ways of working, ways of delivery we are doing. So that's really, really important. And the other one is metrics, right? Be careful with metrics. Do not measure metrics for the sake of measuring. Measure the metrics that really drive improvements. That's my take, right? And accountability and transparency is really important. So make sure everything is visible to everyone. Your code, your user stories, requirements, test cases, defects, and the metrics accessible to everyone in the organization so that you have unbiased view. Because the importance of this one is, as you're working in your team for a long time, you might have unconscious bias. Say, oh, this is how it works, we are okay with that. But when you have outsider looking at that, you have unbiased view. That is really important for improvement. So sometimes speak to other delivery manager and ask, what is your feedback? How do you think this is working? So it's always good to have that unbiased view. Because, I mean, it's not that we are wrong. Unconsciously, we go into that mode, yeah, it's fine, it's working okay. So come out of that situation and always have these feedbacks from others. Finally, quality engineering management this is my view. We are moving away from inspecting quality to influencing quality. We want to influence quality. We want to build good products for the customers. Any questions? Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for your speech. It was very interesting. Actually, some time ago, my team was in the process of transformation, exactly what you said, from the waterfall to Scrum or any agile, maybe hybrid.
Yeah.
And we faced two simple questions. Who should test a new functionality? And the second question connected to this, who should create automation test and how many tests we should create and so on.
Yeah.
First of all, we tried to force our developers to make this testing, but it was not a good experience because maybe they pretended that they can test. And again, we get back to the model when tester tests a new functionality. And actually that means that we are not the quality engineers. We're still the quality assurance as a role. And my question is, how you do this? Maybe it's a secret practice, how to force the developers to start testing the code.
That's a very good question. I mean, the challenge, what we have said is cross-functional team. What is cross-functional team? Everybody should be able to do everything. However, when you're transforming from testers testing to everyone testing, you should have a shorter-term goal and a longer-term goal. Your short-term goal is you transfer that responsibility of testing to the team members. When I say team members, involve everyone. Your product owner should be validating, not waiting till the demo, right? Saying it's not working. That's waste of time. So your team should understand the importance of this validation right from the beginning. When I say right from the beginning, right from the requirements. When you have user story, make sure, have you covered these possible scenarios? Have you covered these possible scenarios as a developer and a QA person? And the next one is the longer term. Yeah, your developers might say, yeah, I've tested this, it's working, but where is the evidence, right? If you're running automation, show me your builds, show me your reports. If you're running manual, sit with them, run with me one test and see how it's working. So that is what we need to improve. And yeah, trust me, it's not easy in one day or 1 week. So you need to have a short-term goals and longer-term goals. Short-term goal is changing that mindset. Long-term goal is building processes that will automatically do it, irrespective of if I stay there or not, the people or teams follow that process. So that way you can achieve. And it's not easy.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And I have a question. What do you think, what is important for a test manager as a person? What personal features? Should a test manager be a leader, or it's more for a project manager and it's not important for him or her?
Right. That's a very interesting question. So test manager, the answer for that one varies where you're working. So the test management or quality management is all context-based, right? So you have to be a leader when necessary. As I said, you have to be strong when you need to make a decision and with the right evidence. At the same time, you should not hinder your delivery process. So it's all context-based. How do you see your delivery? If I put 10 more checkpoints, am I going to break my delivery life cycle? So you need to understand and analyze that situation and be a leader or a team member depending on the context.